Chapter 10. Knowing his father was ill, Jackson tried to keep a distance between the two of them. He felt ready to take over the companies and put them under one banner. Now was a good time to inform him of his engagement to Victoria. This revelation would give Jackson some relief and make his father happy. He was tired of battling his mind and conscience. When Jackson entered the dining room for breakfast, his father glanced up with a raised eyebrow. "I see you've made changes in your appearance." Jackson's gaze fell on the dark blue suit tie and white shirt he was wearing. "I guess you have finally grown up." "I grew up, father, the day I left your house." His father raised another eyebrow. "I didn't come here to argue with you, father, but to tell you that I'm aware that the company grandfather left you is almost bankrupt. I will overhaul it and try to salvage what I can. I plan to ask Victoria to set a wedding date." His words came spilling out like water from a faucet. He was afraid that if he didn't them all out right away, they would get stuck in his throat and his father would know that he was disingenuous. "Well, Jackson, I don't know where you've been, but I do know that whatever happened to you made you the man I hoped you would become. Wherever I was for the last year, and whomever I came into contact with, had an effect on me." "I just hope it wasn't a woman," the senior said, using a spoon to crack a boiled egg that sat a small silver pedestal. Jackson couldn't help but watch the ritual his father relished, wondering, couldn't he take the damn egg in his hands and peel it? "I don't have much appetite," the old man said with a grimace. Jackson watched his father's drooping eyes and mouth, his once thick hair now thin and white. Where had the years gone? Was he going to wake up one day and find himself old and full of regrets? "Father, I know what I have to do. I accept my position in life. I'm no longer that boy who lived for football and partying. I gave that up the day I was hurt and could no longer play. That was the day I became a man. I realized that life wasn't about being a football star because when I could no longer be that drunken, carefree jock, my friends left me." "They left you because you were arrogant and an ass." Jackson looked into his father's eyes and began to laugh. "For once I agree with you, Dad." It was the first time in years that Jackson called his father Dad. It had happened one other time when he was a 9. "Well, my boy, come with me to the country club and we can play a round of golf. We can see old friends and you can talk to Victoria's father. I'll let it be known that my boy has returned and he's in charge." The country club was everything Jackson had remembered and disliked. The club members, who walked around in their yellow sweaters and plaid pants, were a small group of influential men heading billion-dollar corporations. Some were as old as his father, and a few the age of his grandfather. They rode in golf carts most of the day with drinks in hand and their caddies in tow. It had not changed in the 50 years of its existence, and he suspected that it wouldn't change anytime soon. He appeared to be the youngest man in the club. It was because the dues had rose so high that many men his age were waiting for their parents or grandparents to die, so they could inherit their positions or at least inherit the money to afford the dues. Nevertheless, Jackson could afford everything that came with being the son and grandson of Jackson Van Hughes. His father showed Jackson off to his friends, and the younger man was forced to answer uncomfortable questions about where he has been and what made him walk away from the game. He was pretty much ready to run for his life. During lunch and cocktails, Jackson turned to his father. "I don't think I can do this." "What do you mean?" His glance lay on Jackson, and then moved around the room to detect if anyone had heard his son. The elder Jackson had boasted about his son taking over his company and marrying Victoria. It was understood that this was a given deal. Marry Victoria, take over the company, and have children. The way Jackson was going, though, there would be no children. "Father, I meant that I can't socialize with men the age of my parents and grandparents. I don't want to wake up one day and find that this is all there is in life, hanging around on the golf course playing golf, eating and drinking and controlling others' lives and waiting to die. I'm not saying that you have to do this forever, but these men can teach you something. Look at them, Dad. They can't teach me anything that surviving a plane crash and blindness hasn't taught me. I saw death. Which one of them has seen what I have seen? They are the ones that create this life for young men who are not rich while they hang out with their friends and discuss death. I want more. Jackson stood and left, leaving his father sitting and gazing blindly at him leaving the restaurant, walking through the doors and asking for a taxi. He planned to sell his house with all its furniture and sports cars. He decided he wanted to see the place one more time, where the memories of the girl and the night he spent with her were fresh. Maybe going back there would trigger something. For some unseen reason, he couldn't remember the name of the girl. In his mind, he could only bring up a silhouette of her face. Her high school records were spotty when he inquired about her. The school never received her records. She enrolled and 3 weeks later she was gone. Jackson always had summer on his lips. Why did he think of summer whenever he tried to visualize the girl whom he fell in love with? It was puzzling to him. Maybe it was the season that he loved that brought back memories. Why was it so difficult for him to remember names and faces? Maybe the doctors missed something, he thought. He decided that he should make time from his busy schedule and see a brain specialist. The cab stopped in front of his house. He closed the door, gave the cabbie his fare and tip. Then she stood looking at his beautiful home. The long winding driveway that led to his home was bordered by lush bushes and flowers. Trees were planted near the house to obscure the view. He remembered that it had a trail to the beach. Why am I thinking of the beach? He questioned aloud. Walking up the steps, he opened the door. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Van Hughes. I was told that you wouldn't be living here, and I could show the house at will. Your information was correct, Angela. I wanted to see the house before it was sold. The couple who is interested is upstairs. They said that they used to come here when they were teens, and some of their best memories were in this house. That was in my younger days. It was a case of youthful indiscretion. You are still very young, Mr. Van Hughes. But I feel old, Angela. And his gaze followed the staircase up to his bedroom. Maybe you're taking life too seriously. I find when that happens to me, I go somewhere and party. Jackson's gaze wandered about the house. It was those words that transformed his thinking. He had been wasting his life searching for a young girl who probably would never remember him, and chasing lost memories of someone he thought he loved. He watched as the couple walked hand in hand down the staircase. Jackson didn't recognize them, and they didn't recognize him. At some point, the whole school may have passed through his doors. Mr. Van Hughes, I've seen that look before. Let me know if you plan to keep it. I will, Angela. Jackson walked around to his enormous garage that held 6 cars. He chose a Mercedes, tapped the button, and drove away. He drove through the open gate to his father's home and parked it in the front of the entrance to the mansion. He sat a while and looked around and then stepped out. Chapter 11. Summer made her decision. She wouldn't go back to Houston. She would stay in West Texas in the hopes that soon Adam Jackson would be back. In his journal, he had expressed his desire to marry her. She was sure he would find her one day. She loved San Francisco. It was filled with good memories, and she heard it was a great place for working in the tech field. She hadn't given up her dream of being a doctor, just delayed it. With a bachelor's degree and being technology literate, why not go there? She had stayed in Houston longer than she had planned, thinking that Adam Jackson would come back. But he never did. While checking the local papers at the county store for employment and the San Francisco Chronicle online, she found an advertisement for a personal assistant at an oil company. She decided to visit Jane and David's trailer and tell them of her decision. Jane opened the door and invited her in, poured Summer a cup of coffee, and placing a small plate containing a piece of pound cake in front of her. They sat and talked. "I'm moving to San Francisco." Jane wore a worried glance. "I'm going to be okay. I've been all over the world and I know how to take care of myself," Summer said, staring ahead. "I wish you could stay here with us. You seemed so happy before with that guy of yours." "I know, but he found his family now and he's happy. I'm going back where I was the happiest. Maybe touch base with a friend. He may have a job for me. I never knew what happened to him anyway." A small smile broke on Summer's face. Finding Jackson was remote. Summer had forgotten his last name, but she remembered his first name, Jackson. "I hope you find what you're looking for, dear." Jane held Summer's hand like a mother giving her daughter advice. "You'll be fine," Jane added, standing and going to a window overlooking a sink of dirty breakfast dishes, then taking one dish at a time and loading it into the dishwasher. After the last dish, she sat at the table with Summer. "I wish I was as young as you, then me and Dave would go with you. Take a road trip. I'd like to see San Francisco before I die. But that's just wishful thinking. We might make the trip there, but we would never make it back." Jane sighed and then a smile crossed her lips. Summer realized that if she was going to do something, she had better do it now before. She became full of regrets, and her regrets piled up like dirty dishes. She was young, and she vowed that the only regrets she would have from this day forward would be not trying to connect with Jackson after she moved to Houston. After saying goodbye to Dave and Jane, she packed and purchased a plane ticket to San Francisco. The personal assistant job, if she got it, would come with an apartment. She would figure the rest out later. She had just enough money to last for a month. If something didn't happen by then, she would be back in West Texas.